Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
How's it going, guys?
It's a beautiful day.
Happy 4th of
4th
July.
of July.
Yeah. 4th of July.
Actually.
We're recording on a holiday because I messed up on Monday and fell and had a whole bunch of stuff going on, and these guys were...
I thought we said we were going to keep you in a protective suit so that way that didn't happen.
Actually, it is time. Miranda has ordered the bubble wrap and the helmet.
And I thought it was supposed to be here already.
It was supposed to happen around my birthday, but things were kind of going so good. But the closer we get to the middle of July or the end of July, the bubble wrap party's coming.
Got it.
Yep.
Well, I mean, it was pouring down raining today, and of course it's humid as all get out. So that's
Did it rain up here?
Oh, yeah.
It stormed this morning.
It stormed.
Well,
It didn't rain. It didn't rain a drop at my house.
Get out.
Nope.
How unfortunate. That's why it's so humid around here right now. I walked outside and I was like, ugh.
I only
Feel the
wish that I had rain at my house
Really?
right now. Yes. My friend Mark at his nursery is he needs rain
Okay.
badly.
I wish
And
I would've-
unfortunately, it just, you see the radar, it just seems to just like skirt to the north or to the south. And
Right.
it just very seldom ever just comes straight across. I mean, it's just like, what's going on? So it's like some sort of like protective shield or something, you know? So I don't know. I mean, it's just, it sprinkled a little bit, I think, down the road. I saw the road was wet, but beyond that, not much.
You know, we are in South Louisiana, and that big chemical and refinery, Exxon,
Yes.
it produces so much heat. They've actually showed a cloud storm splitting to move around the heat, that there's so much heat coming off of it that the clouds and storm was so low it kind of moved to the side.
That's wild.
And I'm like, wow.
That's unbelievable, because I've often wondered if, you know, because I feel like it rains in different areas a lot more than it does where I live now.
Okay.
I don't know why. The area I kind of grew up in, I used to remember getting rain all the time. And now it just seemed like I don't get it the way, at least I don't remember getting rain like I used to as growing up as a child. I just don't. And I don't know if we're in a new climate pattern, or if it's just the geography or something, or just like you said, maybe it's this chemical plant maybe is causing that. I find it hard to believe, though, that one chemical plant can alter.
Right.
But it's not, but see, that's just it. It's not just one plant. You've got 15 or 20 plants, massive plants. I mean, there's a lot of heat coming up from this area, and the more concrete that we put down, the more asphalt that we put down, and the more trees that we cut down, and, you know, it just produces more heat.
Right. So.
I will say, I don't think we talked about this on the last episode, but you got your iPad now. I know you were talking about it on the show.
Yes, I finally bit the bullet, and I
Yeah.
actually went and bought this iPad. I also bought the Magic Keyboard with it, and I know probably the anti-Apple people are probably like, you just,
Nah,
you know,
okay.
you bought into the
That's okay.
Wetware or whatever it's called, and all this other stuff.
Jason's already bought into the Apple system, so I don't blame him for digging himself further, because you can't get yourself out of it.
You can't get out of it.
See, I don't understand that. You know, I'm not an Apple person, you know, and my question to you is, you know, we're all men of faith, and we
Stop it. Stop.
How did Adam and Eve fall?
Stop it. Stop it.
How did they fall?
No.
How did they fall? Seriously. How did Adam and Eve fall?
What, he took a bite of the apple.
And
that
what's
Eve
on the
gave
back
him.
of your iPad?
Well,
An apple,
With?
a bite in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a...
I'm part of the machinations of the beast.
What is it called? Correlation versus causation? I don't think it's the same thing.
when you look at the Apple product is made in China, for the majority now, that's being moved to India.
Right.
But right now, 90% of Apple
It's
products
China.
are made in China.
Right.
And the Chinese government comes out and says no military and no politicians can own or possess an Apple product. What do they know?
Yeah, they probably knew something.
Right.
They know something.
But besides all that, as far as like a product goes, like I said,
it's a good product.
An ecosystem. Like I mean, they all
works
well with each other. So.
It works. It's easy to use.
What's more important?
Is all my Android stuff.
Right. I was gonna say for at least the most important thing is the computer you're building at home is gonna be.
Yeah, no, the one I'm building at home, that's a whole different. That's PC,
I bet that won't be Apple.
No, there's no Apple there. That's a whole different animal there. That's a whole. This is.
So your hypocrisy only goes so far.
Exactly.
Okay, and I'm the same way. My work computer is a MacBook, the top of the line for the graphic design, video editing work that I do. But the one that we're recording this podcast on is a Windows-based system. Right. I play for both teams. But anyways.
I'm going to leave that one alone.
Maybe one day in the future, right. This whole notion of competition and all that will eventually it'll just exist.
I think it's all a healthy competition. I think it's all good. I don't like that there's a monopoly on one thing or the other. It may seem like that for the smartphone market. But there is people that can make other options out there, and I like that. I like that they push each other to be better.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think that this Windows laptop would exist if it wasn't for Apple really making a stellar laptop, and they're trying to make something that can.
Right. I mean, I would say I like the Surface tablet. Mm-hmm. That was a nice. I had one at work for a couple years. I enjoyed it.
Right.
But
it's all good.
Yeah, I got this. This is the new iPad. It's the OLED version.
Right.
So I've enjoyed it so far. I mean, it helps me, research, and I'm not straining my eyes and
trying to look at your phone.
Look at stuff at my phone and all these other things.
Hey, I had a good little system up there for you.
You did, and I appreciate it, Stoney. I really do. But it's just what it is. So
now,
but,
with all that
it's so funny, real quick, that we were originally supposed to record this episode on Monday, July 1.
Right? Okay, yeah.
But that ties into the guy that we're talking about.
Yes.
Really?
Yes,
it does. Very much so.
That's the day he died.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
yes. I was going to bring that up, but I'm glad you did there.
Well, here we go. Who are we talking about today?
We're going to be talking about Michel de Nostredame.
Actually, since you said the Michel de Nostredame.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And he's known as Nostradamus.
Right.
But, yeah.
So, yeah.
He was born in 1503. That was just a couple of years before me.
Yeah.
Stop it.
I went into the
doctor. I was wondering. I knew you were old, Stoney, but I didn't realize you went back that far.
I went into the doctors. I had like 14. This is Thursday and everything's closed, but I had like 14 doctor's appointments this week alone. And I went in, and the people in these places are fantastic.
Oh, of course.
But you can tell by the end of the day.
Oh, they have dealt with frazzled. Some people. Yeah.
And so there was this sweet lady behind. I had seen her a couple of times, and she said, "Okay, what's your last?" She hasn't looked up. She goes, "What's your last name?" Hughes. Okay. What's your date of birth? And I said, 6/18/1764. And she never looked up. And she goes, "Well, damn, baby, you look good for being over 200 years old." And she's the only one that's ever caught that. Everybody else, I say, they look at me like I'm crazy, but she didn't even look up and didn't miss a beat. It was awesome. Sorry, I just had to throw that in.
I love that. It's great.
So what do we know about Nostradamus?
I know that he's done some predictions. And I know
a lot less than he knows about us, apparently.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was kind of doing some, kind of looking at a few things. I mean, because we've all seen the programs on all his predictions of the future, and he's still very much referred to as a fairly accurate seer, for lack of a better term, even though he never considered himself that.
Right. He was an astrologer, a physician, and an acapari. How do you say it? Acapari does the herbs and stuff. Apocryphy or something like that.
Yeah.
Here's my brain damage again.
I know that apothecary.
Apothecary.
That's
That's
it.
it.
Is the
Yes.
I know it's like the shop that they sell
Yes.
stuff out of. I'm not
Yes, that
sure
was
that's
it right there. Yes. And so he had a lot of information coming in, and he turned it into something else. He was smart. For his time, he was pretty smart.
Yeah, he's known for his most famous book. I think it was titled Les Prophéties. I believe
yes.
it was appeared in 1555. Now, of course, there's a lot going on.
I think it's French, so it's probably not.
Yeah, it's probably named some other.
Right.
No, you're very close. You're very
Right.
close. But a lot of this started, the prophecies and the astrology started after the death of his first wife. It kind of affected him and changed him, and he kind of wanted to know more about the future. And I think he started at their time what research and thought process they could do.
Right, yeah.
But it was the death of his first wife
Right, he was a practicing physician
during the plague.
During the plague,
During the plague, yes.
Scary.
and on one of his road trips, for lack of a better term, I mean, he's out traveling, and he comes back and finds his wife and his 2 kids dead.
Oh gosh.
So they
that
died.
changed him.
They died of the plague, and he kind of disappeared for a while after that. And they say his attention shifted more into the metaphysical and the spiritual after that. So imagine he's trying to make sense of a world going awry. We all know that the Black Death took a third of Europe. There were bodies being piled up in the streets because of the amount of this plague was affecting people. And the funniest thing, he never came down with it.
And I've always wondered that. Like,
And think about that. I mean,
what was the thing that was there practices in place that people were doing to not get the plague? Was it just an immune system thing? Like, I wonder what was.
Well,
I
mean,
think
was that
some people were
1/3?
just cleaner than others. If you think about it, they were just, and because that was one of the things that came up was be clean. They started pooping away from the house and peeing away from the house because at that point in time, everything just went into the street.
Right.
I mean, the bathrooms were a little hole on the end of the story, and you just pooped into the street, or you peed into the street, and so things just got a little bit cleaner.
Well, yeah, I mean, the plague is. I mean, the plague came from the fleas from rats,
Right.
So, whether he was in an environment where maybe the rat population wasn't, he kept out of his area.
Well, and it's not just him. Like you were saying, that like the plague itself took out such a large portion of Europe, and I was thinking, like, what was the people that did survive it? What were their tricks that made them survive?
Well, I mean, most of his adult life, he suffered from gout and arthritis.
Oh, gosh.
So he had his own health issues that he dealt with.
I read that he died of congestive heart failure as well, which is or supposedly.
Yeah, it says the condition said the last few years of his life, the condition turned into edema or dropsy. I guess I'm pronouncing that right. DROPSY, where abnormal amounts of fluids accumulated beneath the skin or within the cavities of the body. Without treatment, the condition resulted in what you just said, congestive heart failure.
Wow. Right.
So that's what he died of, supposedly. Now, it's funny because on the evening of July 1, 1516, he allegedly told his secretary, Jean de Chevigny, or whatever it's called, right. I quote, "Tomorrow at sunrise, I shall no longer be here." Next morning, he was reportedly found dead on the floor next to his bed.
Wow.
Dang.
So...
he got one prophecy right.
He got one well, he also got another one right, too. But, he had his critics. He had his critics. There were people that felt that his astrology was completely out of whack. And this was at a time where actually people took astrology fairly seriously.
Very seriously.
It was very much a part of the culture, even though at the time, you're dealing with, okay, what's going on in the 1500s in Europe? You had plague. You have Europe coming out of the Crusades.
Right.
You've got the Protestant Reformation starting to rear its head at that time. So Europe, as we know it, was a powder keg of stuff going on. So some of the things that he had to be careful of how he went about, because anybody that was purporting to be able to predict the future, and of course now you can get charges of sorcery and you're convorting with the devil and stuff like that, and so probably the church at that time was very hyper alert of people that were preaching something other than what the Catholic Church had said was, this is dogma.
Especially since the Reformation was kind of happening at the same time with Martin Luther, and that's a whole nother episode there.
That's
came out and said, what y'all are doing is wrong. So
a lot of people are very critical because they say, well, his quatrains are unclear, and typically when you hear about people predicting the future,
well, he had a very cryptic style.
It's all cryptic. It's very hard to verify, because it's like after it happens, like, oh, there it is. Everybody says so. I don't know. Look, a quarter of the world population believes in ESP and clairvoyance.
I mean, like currently?
Currently,
oh, okay.
yes.
Okay.
So this is nothing new.
Right.
I mean, we're still dealing with this idea that some people can predict the future. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But there's a sizable amount of the world population currently that believes that some people do have extraordinary abilities.
Wow.
To be able to predict the future.
Well, let's go there. What do y'all believe? Do you believe, Ian? Do you think there's people out there?
I don't know.
What about you, Jason?
It's like I've said, I'm always neutral on this kind of stuff.
I do.
I agree.
I do believe that. I guess I have a little bit of more of an open mind when it comes to these things. Now, it's funny because I also read a study about I believe it was at the University of Chicago, that they cited that they interviewed 2,000 people. It was a sizable study over a long period of time about psychic and how do you believe in this stuff, you don't believe in this stuff, and it finds that when it comes across, as far as they group people according to education level, age, the whole kit and caboodle, you name it, they controlled all that, and it come to find out that people that are more apt to believe these things score lower on analytical tests.
Okay.
On analytical tests than people who score higher. But when it comes to memory, both are the same, which I found that interesting.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't necessarily prove that people who
Correlation,
believe, there's no correlation as far as whether people believe that, does that mean that, okay, well, it's all BS because I'm just more analytical than you are because I can interpret data better than you can, and maybe people that don't have that to that level are more apt to form opinions about certain things? I don't know. I found that interesting when I was kind of going through some of this stuff.
Speaking on what you were just talking about, I think I've said it on the show specifically. Like, I feel like the way my mind works in a lot of those moments where I feel like people would jump towards oh, this place is haunted. Oh, it's a ghost. Oh, it's this or it's that. I feel like I'm always like, there is some sort of logical, some sort of potentially scientific kind of explanation that I can probably put to this. And a lot of times that's where my mind would immediately jump towards. It's like, oh, it's probably this or probably that. And I think I've told the story about how the the door to my utility room kept knocking and kept sort of opening and stuff. And then one day I noticed that whenever it was raining and there was a lot of wind, the door to the garage doesn't have very good weather sealing, and when the wind would blow, it would I could see the utility room door open and kind of close, and the latch would hit, and I was like, oh, it's there's a. But again, if I didn't look at that, and I didn't really ask that question of what's causing that to happen, I would just go, oh, the door just opens now and then. It's probably just a ghost just kind of jingling the doorknob or something. So that's where my mind goes towards a lot of that kind of stuff. Do I believe that there are people that are more in tune to the spiritual world? Yes. Now, is it specifically ghosts and ESP kind of stuff and clairvoyance? I'm probably not so much, but I do believe it's we've talked about on the show before. I do believe there's there is this physical realm and spiritual realm and that kind of stuff. And I do believe that people can probably have a little bit more of a connection than others, but I don't necessarily believe that that's.
Well, until my accident, I had a very analytical mind, but I saw things in my lifetime that lead me to believe that those things are there.
I've had discussions with people.
I don't dismiss them at all because I've seen things like that. People who can see the future, can tell things about other people's lives. I mean, one of the things is Miranda.
Right.
Miss Doris, I was the head of security for a church, and Miss Doris was an employee there, and one day she come running up to me and she said, Mr. Stoney, I need to talk to you. God has a word for you. And I said, okay. No one knew that I was going to ask Miranda to marry me. And she said, you're going to ask that girl to marry you. And I said, yes, ma'am. She says, whatever you do, do not give her a ring. You can ask her to marry you. She's going to say yes, but do not give her a ring. Now, I had told no one that I was going to ask. Not even my best friend at the time knew I was going to be asking Miranda to marry me. So a couple of days later, Miranda and I were out having dinner, and I said, Miranda, look, in 5 or 7 years, when I finally work up to asking you to marry me, do you want me to have a ring? No, God, no. Please don't have a ring. I'm very particular about my jewelry. How did that happen? How did Miss Doris know that I did not need to have a ring? That was crazy. That was just insane to me. Now, that's very small and minute, and probably all of our listeners and Jason and Ian's eyes, I can see them glassing over because of my story. But,
and I've said this before. I've said this about a whole bunch of stuff. All the things that I am suspicious of, I have no definite answers. That's why I feel like I try to take a big middle ground, because I'm like, does it feel, what's reasonable? Does it feel reasonable? Does it feel like it's real? Can I logic my way through this? And that kind of stuff, when it's a personal experience like that, I can't discredit that. I've had people firsthand, I've gotten to talk with people that have felt like they have seen the face of God at having a near-death experience. And I'm like, I can't tell you that that's not real. You had that experience, and you shared a very powerful word with me, and that's awesome. And I'm not going to say that's not real. And so some people that say they can see ghosts, they feel certain things, I'm like, I'm not going to say that's not true. Have I experienced that? Not necessarily, but that's just my experience. So, but
well, Stoney, talking about asking Miranda to get married and all that. I found this pretty interesting here about some of the things Nostradamus made. He made a love jam.
Yes.
Oh, what?
Yes.
He made a love jam.
Yes, he made a love jam.
Are we talking about a love song? Are we talking
this is a love jam that you ate.
Oh,
okay. It said it was made from mandrake apples, sparrow's blood, and eyelids from the arms of an octopus.
So he really was an apothecary,
yes.
potions.
Yes.
Oh,
he says the love jam was so powerful that it would induce a burning of her heart to perform the love act when combined with saliva in the midst of a kiss.
Oh, so we're talking about like an aphrodisiac?
Yeah, you I guess you ate this,
Yeah,
and then you kiss, and then the chemicals,
earliest form of Viagra.
It would cause the woman to have a burning desire in her heart that I want to get it on. So, I mean,
Now you see here, all these pharmaceutical companies are making so
wild.
much money on Viagra, and Nostradamus had it, you
The
know,
love jam.
how many
the
years
love
ago?
jam, yes.
So
I mean, so
600 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, who knows? Maybe it worked.
I mean,
I don't know. I mean,
I've
none of
never-
us were there. I mean, so,
no.
he also had several medical recipes such as laxatives, a rose pill. It was a lozenge to treat the plague.
Wow.
He also created a blonde hair dye and a toothpaste using ground cuttle and bone, sea snail shells,
Oh gosh.
or if your teeth were really rotten, yeah. So it's I don't know. I was reading some of this stuff that he created. It was a cookbook called A Treatise on Cosmetics and Conserves. So that's kind of where all this stuff. So he was involved. He did a lot of things. I mean, he's famous for his predictions, but I mean, he was a little bit more than just writing down predictions.
Right,
I mean, he was
a physician.
He was a physician.
But he also, I like
ways.
that, he got famous. You said that. He got so famous that he became King Charles IX's physician and astrologer.
Yeah.
I mean, he was known. I mean, people knew what he was doing, and some of his predictions were coming true. And that was just, so that when he got to that status, he could then talk about things without the fear of persecution that we talked about earlier, because he was the king's guy. So.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, I was reading some of the things that, I'm very careful about watching, I have found that the History Channel, when some of this stuff, I find they're a little biased toward the Catholic Church and stuff like that. But,
also they have to make it entertaining.
They got to make it entertaining. Yeah. But, I mean, it says here that he was accused of heresies in the 1530s for making a few critical comments about the church.
Uh-oh.
Still, in his will, he did declare himself to be a true faithful to Christianity, and he even made bequests to some religious orders. So I think you got to be a little careful on. Back then you could say something just innocently could be taken as heresy.
I mean, even today you can be, a religious person in some way and say some things that, of course, the organized religion would go,
right.
Oh,
right.
How dare you? And it's like, I mean, I'm still consider myself
right. Exactly. So some of this stuff you have to.
Yeah.
But just how far he's actually of Jewish.
Really?
Believe it or not, he was the son of a prosperous and historically Jewish family. They became Christian, which many Jewish people did at that time. Jewish people that are living in that part of France at that time, they were given a choice by the Christian ruling class whether you see everything they own confiscated by the state or convert to Christianity. Matter of fact, probably, I wouldn't be surprised if that's probably where my father's ancestry comes from that area of Germany and France, because that's where they originated from. It was a border area that, with my last name being what it is, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point centuries ago, there, my ancestors might have been Jewish.
Right.
Matter of fact, my father said all the time he was Jewish.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. Speaking of, I've been I'm not gonna lie, I've been thinking about Father Jeff recently.
Okay.
I
thought about our episode again and just
Jeff, Father Bahi?
Yeah, Father Bahi.
Oh, that was a great episode.
Yes, I enjoyed that.
I've been
he was a
thinking
character,
about him.
wasn't he? He was something
so
else.
Yeah.
He does not hold back.
I was thinking about him recently. And
we need to reach out and
go.
touch base with him and see if he's got anything else to say and get him back over here.
I feel like he always has something to say, but it's good. Just what?
Yeah, his I'm reading here. It says Nostradamus' paternal grandfather chose to convert and changed the family name from Gassonet, if I'm Gassonet, to de Nostradame, a Christian reference to the Virgin Mary, and typically spelled today as Notre Dame, which means Our Lady. The Latinization of this name, it almost goes without saying, was Nostradamus.
Wow.
So that's where
you're talking about a big thing to do, like changing your family's name. And
well, I mean, that happened in more recent times when a lot of immigrants came here in the early 20th century.
Yeah,
a lot of them did change their name.
I mean, I'm pretty sure.
To a more kind of Anglo.
Yeah, my family did the same thing.
Yeah,
making it less Irish.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. As I said, he wrote this down. Whether he could predict the future, we'll never know. Now, his fan base will say many of his quatrains have come true.
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there that he did. We talked about the Great Fire of London.
Right.
And he predicted that. And I think the wording was describing a fire in the new city that would cause bloodshed and famine. And London at that time was considered a new city. It had been old, but it was the new foundation of the government and the king, and all of a sudden, but that's also one of the things that attribute to ending the plague, was the Great Fire of London.
Cleaned out
cleaned it all up.
It burned everything up.
Burned all the rats.
But he also predicted the rise of Napoleon, Hitler.
Yep.
The atomic bombings in 1945. The prediction mentions the two great rocks will war for a long time. Talking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He also predicted the September 11th, 2001 attacks, and the quatrain mentions birds of steel in the sky and the fire in the new city, New York, and sometimes linked to terrorist attacks of the World Trade Center.
Yeah, he also predicted John F. Kennedy's assassination.
Yes, he did that too. Yep.
There's people say he predicted that. I said Napoleon, Hitler.
Well, the Hitler thing was pretty close.
Hister.
Yeah.
Not bad for a guy.
Not bad, 500, 600 years ago, talking about something that's pretty specific.
Right.
Because that could have been not an interpretation, but just how he said that. He could have been,
Well, his prophecies were utilized by the Nazis.
Yes, because they were very occult oriented.
Right, yeah. In 1939, actually, Joseph Goebbels' wife somehow got a hold of one of these, and she showed it to her husband. Well, we all know who Joseph Goebbels was. He was the propagandist for the Nazis. So, because he felt that when they started digging into this, that actually it predicted victory for the Nazis. Mm-hmm. Well, then, so funny, because then the Americans turn around and they did the same thing, just the opposite.
Well, you know what? They had possession of the Spear of Destiny. And when they had possession of the Spear of Destiny, they were basically unbeatable. And when America took possession of that spear, it was only a couple of days later that Hitler committed suicide. So they were very occult oriented. They knew. They even had a whole division based on the occult. And so the movie, what was the movie? With the Ark. And Raiders of the Lost Ark. It wasn't very far from that. Now, they used a lot of theatrical license, but they were looking for artifacts like that.
Yes.
They had a whole division looking for artifacts.
Yeah, because he believed that they would give him supernatural power. Mm-hmm. And supposedly the Spear of Destiny, that's what it did. It made you invulnerable.
Mm-hmm. And as soon as they lost that, he was dead.
And just FYI for our audience of who doesn't know what the Spear of Destiny is, that is the lance that pierced the side of Christ.
Right.
It's the spear. It's the lance of Longinus. who is the Roman centurion at the foot of the cross. And there's a lot of legends regarding Longinus. And supposedly he actually became a Christian after that event and eventually died a martyr's death. So, very interesting. That might be another good episode for us to look into Sphere of Destiny. But just some of the predictions. I mean, you know, Stoney, you mentioned death of King Henry II of France is another one. The French Revolution.
Yes.
Of course, Napoleon, Louis Pasteur's discoveries. Hitler, World War II, the atom bomb, the first moon landing. There's another one. 9/11, JFK's assassination. But, you know, it's easy to kind of talk about and kind of look at these quatrains and say, well, yeah, okay, you can read it, and okay, I can see how you can draw from that to say, okay, he predicted the future. Question is, what he predicted beyond that? Those are the things that I want to know about.
Right.
So there's quite a number of them for 2024. Including our election, including a deadly virus that was found, a 40,000-year-old virus that was found in the ice. And how many people are now believing with this election coming up that a virus of epic proportions isn't going to be released to stop the election coming in November? That's on the news every night now.
Well,
something's going to happen to stop this
Well, I'm going to tell you, if you're talking to somebody who got over COVID not too long ago, I can tell COVID's still out there.
Yeah.
But
before we continue, I misspoke and I researched myself. I was referring to Rabbi Barry. Earlier, whenever you were talking about Jewish, I forgot we had Father Jeff on,
and then
as well.
Rabbi Barry Weinstein.
Regardless, I want to get both of them back on, but
How about on the
specifically
same episode.
Great.
but specifically, I was thinking when you were talking about Jewish stuff, I was talking with a friend who was also Jewish as well, and I was thinking about him recently, Rabbi Barry, and I was like, it's been a while since I've talked to him as well, and again, both of them regardless. But I was thinking specifically about him as well. It's like it's been
well. I mean, when it comes to being, I mean, Jewish is not necessarily a racial characteristic.
Right. No.
It's a religion. That's what makes you Jewish.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just I just have a feeling probably somewhere many centuries back, probably about this time when many Jewish people were becoming Christian because that's what you needed to do.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe going far enough back. Who knows what you are if you go far enough back?
Well,
and where your family comes from and everything else.
As much as a historian as Rabbi Barry is, there's no telling what he can lead to the
like I said, I didn't mean to derail what you were talking about. I just I knew as I was saying it, I was like, I think I misspoke, but I couldn't remember, and so I wanted to go ahead and clarify that. Right. But again, regardless, both of them, if they're listening, I'll have to get both of you back on the show.
In 2025, I was looking at some now. You say in 2024, I did read that it does predict that the current pope will either pass away and step down. There'll be a new pope.
But it also is kind of specific that it will not be a European pope. It will be a darker skinned, and they don't
Asian
know
or
African.
And well, I mean, my personal, I'm hoping it's an African pope. And I have reasons to want that.
Okay.
But I'll also look past 2024 to 2025. And there is a rise of an aquatic empire.
Atlantis.
I'm
playing.
A cosmic collision. A digital revolution. Even more so than what we're we're dealing with now. Shadows rising. There's a great revolution that's going to happen. Quantum awakening. That is, I'm telling you, man, we've talked about this with AI. And I've said when quantum computing gets to a point where it can integrate artificial intelligence, that is when you're going to see a transformation. It's going to be something that we can't even fathom right now of what a quantum computer can do. I mean, it's going to basically make most things human beings do obsolete.
Well, he also predicted through science advancements that humans would live significantly longer, potentially going from 150 to 170 years of age through scientific and medical advancements. Think about now you started talking about this quantum mechanics and things like that. What will that bring to it? You know, we've talked about, and Ian got ready for war when I was out with my thing, but y'all were talking about clones.
It's
and
just
what will happen with cloning when that comes out.
Well, I you know, as I said, I've talked about on this show before. I do believe the next big jump in medicine is going to be a more individualized approach to medicine. I think they're going to be able to the human genome, as far as that, will be understood at a much better level.
Right.
Be able to map all that out.
They're already in talks about taking stem cells from your body and then being able to reproduce organs, so that way there's no rejection.
Right.
And again, it eliminates the whole organ donor list where you can just.
But would that be kind of the same thing as a clone?
You would have your own
clone.
You would have a bank of organs.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, exactly.
Theoretically,
or blood,
or not even not as a bank. Is it you could you go in for a procedure and then really quickly, then of course in a short amount of time they could just produce one,
right?
Like a 3D printer or something. They can just put your stem cells in there, create a new liver, and then ta-da, you're done, or whatever you would need technically.
So yeah, theoretically,
the whole issue, just to clarify, the whole issue I had with the whole cloning thing was the hypothetical I gave at the end was having these human beings in a bank, which I was like, I don't think that's ethically right at all to have just but we don't got to get into all that. And again, the reason why I was getting frustrated is because
I remember that episode.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because like I said before, and I won't get into it, because it also it tiptoes very. It rides this fine line between also the AI having its own independence,
right?
And so the more and more we talked about it, the more and more I was like, I am now realizing we are not in a place to have that conversation about free will and who has the right to think and believe they are a person. So
what's the thing for when we pull back the veil? What's your term for that?
Seen behind the curtain.
Seen behind the curtains. Right. We have a studio audience today, and for our listeners, when that episode came out, I got 4 phone calls. People thought Ian's head was going to explode.
It was because
is Ian okay?
It was all because of the hypothetical I gave out, and the more when we talked about it, the more I was like, I don't think I'm adequately describing the point that I need to describe, because again, the hypothetical I'm giving here and the answers you're giving me is something that I was like, is pardon my words, is damning you guys, because it was because you and Miranda were saying some things and I was like, guys, I'm trying to help you out here, but it sounds like
eugenics and stuff.
Yeah, and I was like, buddy, I need you guys to say that I'm right here, because if you don't, you sound like you guys were bad. Anyways, again, we won't get into all that, but
so I've got a question. I've got a question for y'all. We're talking about prophecy and people with possible ability for that,
right?
Reading stuff like this and understanding, does that give you comfort, or does it create more confusion for you? Do you like hearing somebody's prophecies, or is it just it's a fun thing in life, or what do you really think about?
Well, I mean, the question you have to ask yourself: do you really want to know the future?
Okay.
I mean, that comes kind of strikes at the heart of who we think we are, as far as I've got control of my own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you really think about it, if I really, no matter what I do, this is the outcome, and you really take that to heart, as far as from a society standpoint, from a macro level, I mean, what happens to human civilization?
Well, think about.
What do people just say? Well, if the world is doomed, then why do anything?
Well, think about this. Before the episode, in the pre-show, we were talking about how Adam and Eve fell. If they knew what was going to happen if they took that bite, would they have taken the bite? If they knew they were going to get kicked out of the Garden of Eden, would they have still taken the bite?
Well, I think that would. The question is, and if you take the story as is, and you accept that there was an Adam and an Eve and a serpent talking to them, and there's an apple growing in a tree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they probably would have done it anyway, because the serpent they would not have known.
Right.
Mm-hmm. They would not have known. Because, I mean, the story is, that Satan is basically saying, well, no, God didn't tell you everything.
Right.
He's
withholding the truth.
Right, he's withholding the truth. That you're not gonna, you're gonna turn into what? You're gonna turn into like gods.
Right.
Okay, which is basically what, if you subscribe, to that, then basically that's good old pride, mm-hmm. which is supposedly the original sin of the devil.
Right.
He wanted to be God.
Right. And that's the whole the whole story is twisting words and
exactly.
Well,
that's how you take that. Now, there's different ways of interpreting the first 10 chapters of Genesis, which it's a whole different ball game.
There's whole people that say that.
But I mean, you got to be careful with the first 10 chapters, because that was put there after the fact and as a means of trying to explain where all these people came from. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're trying to make sense of when the Jews are, supposedly Moses and was the one attributed to writing Genesis. So where did all these other people come from? You got to have story here, So, but beyond that, but yeah, I mean, the idea that if you can predict the future, how does that change how you look at things? Because then the future is fixed to a degree. Can it be manipulated? Maybe so.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if I would want to know my future.
Well,
that would, to me, would be, if I know at this year of my life, this is when my life's going to come to an end.
Right.
That's all you're going to be thinking about.
It's the old, would you rather? Like, would you rather know how you're going to die or when you're going to die? That's the whole, and like, again, I've heard that so many times throughout my life of like, okay, well, when I think about it, it's like, either way you dice it, you're going to be thinking about, if you know when you're going to die, at least like, I'm going to be thinking about that forever, or I have this amount of time before like this is it. Or if I know how, like it's going to be on a sidewalk or in a car crash, I'm like, I'm not going to, every time I'm around something like that, I'm like going to be on edge. So it's just, I don't know. I guess
I came into this world screaming and hollering and covered in somebody else's blood. I kind of figured out I was going out the same way. I did not expect that it would be close to falling and busting my head open. Oh, and just for the record, for our listeners, it's almost time for the Miranda bubble wrap and helmet party.
Right. We'll
all the leaders of my job and Jason and Ian have all volunteered to hold me down so she could wrap me in bubble wrap, because it is now time for another accident. That would be 3 years in a row.
We have no more accidents.
No more accidents. So
can't take another one like that.
No. We ain't gonna, no. I don't even want to go there.
No.
But I guess to answer the question, like, does it excite me to know that, or like, do I find it interesting, like you were saying, about knowing the future, or like for me, I feel like potentially there are some things in the future that are probably sort of fixed, certain big events or certain things, history repeating itself. I mean, but I also believe that there are people that have control over some of it as well. That, we can change our own destinies in a way. So I don't know. Does the predictions? For me, I kind of feel like I think predictions are cool, especially whenever it's after the fact. Do I hold a whole lot of merit to them beforehand? I mean, not necessarily, but
well, now I saw this. They said, according to Peter, and I can't pronounce the last name. It's Lemesurier. So Lemesurier, I guess. Mm-hmm. He was a former Cambridge linguist and professor, translator, believed that Nostradamus did have the ability to project past events into the future.
Oh, right. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I think if you know the history long enough, you can probably...
He said he believed that history repeats itself.
Right.
Now, there's some people who do subscribe to that we live in a cyclical type of reality.
Right.
That certain things come to pass, and then it rises and it falls, and then the cycle repeats itself.
The great filter. If you don't fix it, you're going to fall. Yeah.
And I think it's also, I think it's just human behavior. I think, we get smart enough, and then, we get arrogant enough, we get prideful enough, and then, of course, this whole cycle continues, and everyone chases after certain values and certain things. And
the technique is called bibliomancy.
Okay.
Whoa.
That is the term
We get
that's
into magic
used.
now?
That was a big word for you, huh?
It is. It says Nostradamus purportedly selected extracts from older sources at random and then used astrological calculations to project its reoccurrence into the future.
Wow.
Okay. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
That makes it sound a little more scientific than
maybe that's what
maybe that's all it is.
Nostradamus was trying to do. Maybe he did employ that technique.
So,
If you believe in the idea that past events reoccur, and I could say that, it seems like that happens all the time.
Well, you know what? You know this. Anytime there's an election coming, a virus is going to get released. So every 4 years, we got something new coming. Right. So it does happen.
I mean, I think it's been the same thing with civilizations falling. You give it a civilization goes through its peak, and then of course it has its fall off in some way. Falling.
I was just kind of playing around with Google, like predictions for 2100,
right?
And what will be, and they say actually China will be the richest nation on the planet,
right,
by that time. They also predict that there's great swaths of the earth that will be uninhabitable because of the heat.
I believe that.
They said the rise in temperatures will basically be a significant portion of the globe will basically be what the Sahara Desert is.
Really?
Yeah.
But you see, that's part of the cyclical cycle
right.
of the world. Okay, 15,000 years ago, most of North America was under ice.
Correct.
So tell me how my little car is causing this problem?
No,
it's not. It's just this big cycle that continues over and over and over. The trees get bigger, produce more oxygen, which makes the animals bigger, which produces more CO, which makes the plants smaller and the animals bigger.
Right.
And then a meteor comes down and kills shit, and then we got to start all over again. And it is a big cycle. The whole thing is a big cycle. I do believe that. I actually do believe that. Now, could he have put that down on quill and sheepskin? I don't know, but it's kind of interesting. It's an interesting thought process.
Right. Yeah. As I said, he had his critics. Here's another one. One of his contemporary critics is Lawrence Vidal, who published a pamphlet in 1558 entitled Declaration of the Abuses, Ignorance, and Seditions of Michel de Nostredame, where he severely criticized his lack of basic astrology skills as well as the content of his predictions. So even back then, people were going, yeah, I don't think you're I don't think you know what you're talking about.
But think about it, okay? That was their social media. There were haters back then. It's a big cycle. We got people hating people now.
Wasn't it Benjamin Franklin that just used to write he used to write?
Yeah, he wrote anonymously. Yeah, he wrote anonymously.
Yeah.
He did.
Some of the most foul things he just used to write towards people, and it's like, come on, man.
Ben Franklin would do well in our modern society.
Oh, he would. He really would. He was a womanizer.
Yes.
He was all kind of stuff. He grew marijuana. That was one of his big cash crops was marijuana. So
yeah, it's
he would. I never thought he would do well, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but some of these predictions. He's predicting a great naval battle, possibly war with China. The dethroning of King Charles III.
And the rise of, what's Ding Dong?
Not William,
Harry. But Harry. Harry coming up and taking the throne.
Right, exactly. And then, of course, he predicts more famine and weather disasters. So,
but see, that's an easy one.
Exactly.
Because that happens over and over and over
Famines
again.
come and go.
Yes.
It's... But I will say this, he did, in 1557, he did write, in life I am immortal, and in death even more so. After my death, my name will live on throughout the world.
Dang.
Well, that's two predictions he got right. All about his death, huh?
Yeah. So, he very much... he was a very interesting fella. We've all seen that. There is a huge fan base that follows Nostradamus.
I think it's cool now, like hearing about the fact that you're talking about him researching the past. That makes it a little bit less
less mysterious,
less spiritual. I mean, like, not say there's not a part of that, but it makes it a little bit more like there was
a method to his madness.
Yes, that there was thought behind it. He's like, I don't know.
Well, but I mean, think about it. When you think about time, we've kind of touched on this in some other episodes, but remember the movie Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey?
I don't remember it.
Okay, it came out a few years ago, but it dealt about how time can be bent.
Yeah,
the past is the present is the past, and how all that gets manipulated through just our own natural forces of intense gravity.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. It's
a really great movie.
It's
a really great movie, and then it ends in like a really big like. Whoa.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It is. It's a long movie. Yeah. It makes you kind of think.
Prepare to cry.
Prepare to cry. It's really, but that's what I'm saying. The idea that we exist in a linear way. We start at A and we go to B. And when he gets to the physics and theoretical physics and quantum, guess what? It's now A is Z, Z is A, and T is Z.
Yeah, all at the same time.
All at the same time,
right?
And we all believe, as spiritual people and Christians, that the next life, time doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Well, time is a human constraint.
Right.
Uh-oh. Now we're getting into the real topic here.
That's all time is. That's
time
why
is
it's so hard
guys.
to interpret and translate the first couple of books in the Bible, because what is God 7 days?
Right.
That's a man-made constraint. Okay, sun up, sun down. Okay, let's cut that in half. Let's cut that in half a couple more times, and then because of this thing, we're going to take a couple days off. So it's a human constraint.
Well, we have to try to understand our own reality.
That's right.
I mean, that's our way of trying to understand our own reality. But that's what I'm saying. Maybe, just maybe, if you keep an open mind, that there may be people, because of how time can be not as fixed.
Yeah. Very
that
nice.
Could future events.
Well, we've also talked about
be understood.
We
don't know.
The interstellar travel or dimensional travel may be the brain. It may be conscious power, because the humans only use 10% of their brain. What if Nostradamus could use 14% of his brain or 18%? Could he have a little more insight to things that we have? We've talked.
I've heard
about
that theory is not quite, doesn't really hold up, the whole percentage of brain usage. But that's another story for another day.
I think it does. They've proven you only use, and they were technically inside my brain looking at it. Right. I was only 6%.
But I had a really great conversation recently with a friend of mine about theories on like about ghosts and all that kind of stuff and spiritual things like that. And he was like, and he's one of those kind of out there guys anyways, which is kind of why I really enjoyed talking with him. But we were talking about it, and he was like, what if, like, hypothetically, like, dimensions are all just happening at the same time, all in the same area, so when people start to experience spirits, that's just someone in the same place in a different dimension and things like that. And I'm like, you know what, dude, maybe. If that's what helps you sleep at night, then maybe. And he was like, and then, of course, in time and all that kind of stuff that goes along with it, is it all just kind of...
Well, I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, when you're dealing with extraordinary things, it's very difficult to explain that to someone who's never experienced it.
Right.
It just is.
Right.
People who have some sort of spiritual revelation or whatever the case may be, have experienced maybe something at their house they can't explain.
Yeah.
Just weird stuff. I mean, we've talked about maybe trying to bring on a guest to talk about exorcisms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're not talking about this world anymore.
Right.
We're talking about something completely different. So there is another reality out there. We just don't know it because we're kind of prohibited from going there. But just maybe there are those people that, for whatever reason, the way their brains are wired, it's like their antenna is attuned to that.
I kind of like what you're saying about that. It's like sometimes they say that certain animals and younger kids can see things that adults can't because we get clouded. We get all this stuff
get
put
cynical.
in. We get cynical. What happened? What if some of these people who could see things just haven't got all that cynicism in them?
It could be.
That
You think of all the others. Edgar Casey.
Yes.
Who's the other one we did a show on? The railroad guy.
Stillwell, Oklahoma. No.
It was Stillwell.
Arthur
Stillwell.
Why did I say Oklahoma? Yes.
I mean,
Stillwell.
all these people all had some ability through either themselves or interacting with something else.
Right.
That granted them some foresight into something.
Right.
So I'm very wary of dismissing something because it doesn't fit nice and neat,
Of course,
in our contemporary world that we construct for ourselves. That this is reality and everything else is BS.
we're really, and I think this is great. Coming up into our next episode, we're really tiptoeing on a lot of the stuff in the first few chapters of Chariots of the Gods.
Yes,
which is going to be our
exactly.
next episode of
next episode.
I'm excited.
of not being able to comprehend something of something coming down to people or something, people being aware of something and not being able to describe it and describing it in the best way they know how in their own language or whatever and that kind of stuff. So, it all ties into that kind of stuff as well, where it's like, I think a lot of times people try to describe it in the best way they know how. And maybe some people are connected to external forces. I don't know, but who knows?
Yeah. We don't know, but I urge everybody. I know everybody's probably heard of him.
Right.
Read about this gentleman. He's
actually a very interesting person.
Very much so. And check him out.
Yep.
Kind of interesting to find out he had haters.
Oh, I'm not surprised. That's anybody that's got a strong opinion about someone's got haters.
You're gonna have a hater somewhere, right?
Like I just said recently, for those of you who don't know, our next episode is going to be on Chariots of the Gods. So if you guys want to try and listen to that, it's on Spotify. You can listen to audiobook or you can get it on Audible as well, I believe. But yeah, this was a fun episode. I like this one. It was really nice. But we also, if you want to try and reach out to us, we have a Facebook page /Retrospect Pod, where you can reach out to us and give us little small comments. Also in the YouTube videos, you can comment to us that way, and I'll check out those. Or you can go to our email address, getoffendedtogether@gmail.com, if you have any long responses that can't fit in those comment section formats.
Hey, as we close today's exploration of Nostradamus, a figure shrouded in the mists of time and yet vivid in the collective imagination, we reflect on the body of nature of prophecy. Nostradamus's quatrains veiled in cryptic language remind us of the enduring human fascination with lies ahead. His predictions prompt us to consider not just the future, but how we interpret the signs and symbols present in our own personal lives. The pondering of his legacy, we are reminded that the future perhaps is not something to be foretold, but to be forged by the choices that we make. As we look forward, let's carry with us the sense of curiosity and skepticism, balancing our desire to predict the unknown and our own needs to live a life fully in the present. Thank you for joining us today on this journey through the life and prophecies of Nostradamus. May you find your path illuminated by both the stars above and the earth beneath your feet.
Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
You're the best. Peace.